Welcome one, welcome all, and I am coming live from a frigid basement. That's why I'm wearing the jacket, but luckily I got someone to warm me up, and that's AP. We're going to be talking Bengals.
Whoa. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the family show, Rubio. What are we talking about?
Nah, throwback Thursday to the cuddling session, right? Who was that? The RPS party. All right, we'll move past that. Actually,
Oh gosh. I mean, it's more interesting than talking about the Chiefs game last night.
Oh my goodness! You know how tilted I was. We only got one Chargers drive in that fourth quarter, and it was all Harbaugh's fault too. And of course, your Chiefs get the doink for the division. I mean, how fluky is
It's a
that?
tough watch right now, man. It's a very tough watch. Like you're at the point of the season where a lot of these teams, like honestly, if you think like the Chiefs defense, I mean, they need to get healthy. They had dudes off the street in the secondary last night, and Chris Jones, like it's tough to watch it like super close. Like I feel like he's not having the best of years, but they'll probably get it going in the playoffs like they always do. It's been boring football though. It's been, I don't know. I mean, I really don't know what to say about it. I just don't.
Yep, 100%. And Gary, I dabble in both, and it is very relaxing when you get a nice back scratch when you're the little spoon from the old gal. But we'll move past that one here, and you're exactly right. Talking about what the Chiefs did yesterday, just defensively in the secondary, is Herbert had a bad game. Like I know Herbert only had a couple incompletions in that second half and stuff, but he missed some big throws. He missed Palmer on 2 touchdowns. Let's be honest. And, as someone who played a lot of Palmer yesterday, it was very tilting to see just this exact thing, right? We had a kicker captain in the winner, and it really should have been Josh Palmer. And that was so tilted. We didn't get much Travis Kelce. That Chiefs secondary is gettable as the time is. I mean, you look in the NFL right now, there's only one team playing great football, and even they struggled just a tad yesterday, and that's the Eagles. Outside of that, yeah.
Like one thing too on the Chiefs, where last year Mahomes had more time, and one of the issues was receiver drops. We saw an insane amount of drops. We saw an insane amount of tip balls for picks. My one concern is, dude, he has no time. Like the offensive line is terrible. Like they are absolutely horrendous. That's an issue. That's an issue that they have yet to solve. And I don't know. Like I'm way more dialed in on the NBA side of things right now. So it's not like I'm searching all of, Twitter and like up to date on what they're trying to do on solving that problem. I mean, they're my team. Yeah, I watch all their games, of course. They're boring games, man. They're tough to get through right now. And all I know is, dude, Mahomes has no time. He's getting hit on every play. Like, they're finding ways to win, though. They're getting it done.
Yeah, they are getting it done, and that's all that matters. And we're going to go to 2 teams who are not getting it done: the Dallas Cowboys and the Cincinnati Bengals. And this is like on paper, the records are bad and stuff, but I can tell you this: the Bengals will make any game exciting. And no matter how bad this Dallas Cowboys offense has been, well, there's a great revival spot for them here. This is the Bengals team that made Russell Wilson look like the second coming of Jesus. I mean, he played out of his mind 2 weeks ago. And this is just a team that, or last week, I should say, this is just a team that struggles and doesn't have the talent to get the job done. I think we see another high-scoring game tonight. You got a dome. It's going to be in Dallas. And, should be a fun game, AP. And I brought up the base build. We did our top 150 builds just using projected score. And where's this ownership going to? Well, AP does not want a stud captain tonight, which usually means when we run the Sims, we will start to get stud captains. But the only guy above even like 7K that we get is T. Higgins, and then a little bit of Chase Brown, and that's about it. Like Cooper Rush, Rico Dowdle are there too, but like these guys are way below all these value pieces, and that just shows you how heavy stars and scrubs these Bengals slates tend to be. Because we go to flex, you get a ton of Burrow, Brown, Higgins, Chase, Dowdle. There's your studs right there. Cooper Rush even comes in under 40%, which is slightly surprising. I thought you'd be a little higher than that. When we checked out Bengals slates in the past, it is the same thing, AP. Like once you get the scoring, but also the lack of a mid-range on Bengals slates. If we go ahead and do this, let's go ahead and remove zeros as well. What you see is another range where outside of Cooper Rush at 8,800, you get Brandon Cooks 7K, Gesicki at 5.6, but really none of these plays are going to pop. So it's not going to lead to a whole bunch of mid-range plays. Jake Ferguson's freshly coming off injury. Who's to say he's even going to step into a massive role the way Schoonmaker looked and the way Span Ford can hold his own. I don't really know what to do with this game here, AP, off the rip. What's your initial take on this base build?
I can say honestly, and this is Chiefs Homer talking, I'm way more excited about tonight's slate than I am any Chief. Like Chiefs slates moving forward, dude, they're tough. They are absolutely brutal. So I am far more excited for this one. And a lot of that has to do with kind of how I play. I love jamming studs in at the captain spot, skill position players. I think quarterbacks we've increased this year. And tonight, I think you can make the same case. Like, I don't know if you saw our guy Draft Cheat, he's dialed right now. He's absolutely dialed, crushed it with MMA. I was following some of his stuff over the weekend, killed it. And I love this tweet. He said, a Bengal slate, Burrow is going to pass for 400 yards, but the Bengals are still going to lose. I agree with many parts of that tweet, especially from like building out a game script. Like Joe Burrow's been awesome. Like I don't think he's been obviously the problem for the Bengals. It's their defense. They can't stop anyone. And while the Dallas defense, they've gotten players back, they're slightly better right now, but still it's not like they don't like, what's their motivation right now? I think you're at the point of the season where these players individually obviously have motivations, but as a team collectively, you're not likely getting that, which can lead to these back and forth type of environments. I mean, we saw it, and with the Bengals, we see it each and every week. So it feels like the script is one that we know. It's just how do we get the pieces right? We know there's going to be points in this game. What is the total? 50, 49 and a half, 50?
I thought it was 50 last I looked. Let me go ahead and check the old DK Sportsbook here, and there is probably
I got it right now. It's 49 and a half to 50. And the other thing, too, is when you look at this, I just think, like, look at some of these do you have captain or flex up? Can you go back to and this is our base build, but can you pull the captains up?
Yep, right there. So here, look at all these lack of studs.
Yeah, like some of and we know what it's trying to do. It's trying to jam in the skill position players. And I just think that if we jam in the studs at captain, I just think that's going to be the way that we want to go tonight. And then it becomes a mixing and matching type of game, especially if we get a shootout environment. I mean, if you look at it, and if you just look at over the last 5 games, both teams ranked 32nd and 31st against opposing quarterbacks. So they're giving up a ton of production to opposing quarterbacks and receivers. The same thing, too. The Bengals ranked 29th against wide receivers. So there's going to be a lot of passing production in this game, especially, we would think, from Cooper Rush and company on the Dallas side. I mean, the Bengals defense has just been king at making anyone and everyone look good. I'd love to see the Chiefs against the Chiefs would find a way to look shitty against the Bengals. I mean, I'm convinced. I mean, if we saw that game replayed right now, I think the Bengals might actually beat them, because I don't know if Kansas City can keep pace right now. But anyways, I think this is going to be a fun one to break down, especially in MME formats, especially with our path of jamming and studs.
Yep, and that's what we will do. So both teams coming off a loss, or not a loss. The Cowboys actually won last week against the Giants, and the Bengals ended up losing last week against the Steelers. Cowboys are running on, 11 days rest. So the last game they played was November 28th, and that was the Thanksgiving game against the Giants there. So they're coming in with a little bit more rest, being at home, a little bit of an advantage heading their way against two teams where their seasons are basically over at this point. The Bengals probably have no shot to make the playoffs. The Cowboys definitely have no shot. But let's go ahead and dive into one of these builds here, because I just kind of want to see what this is looking like. Because, look, Hunter Lepke is one of our top captains tonight, and he is projected for 3 points in the captain, right? It makes sense, AP, and I don't think it's a terribly or a terrible path. And I know that it's not a great thing to say about a cheap captain is, I don't mind, but it's going to funnel into the same thing. And like single entries and stuff, if you gave me, how many routes did Lepke run last week? 13 routes, and he somehow fluked into the end zone. I could see something like that working. However, we want stud captain, and that's what we're going to continue to do. And I'm sure the Sims are going to speak the same way. Let's go ahead and move on.
Hey, Rubio, real quick. What do you think? All right, so if you could guess do you know what the optimal was for the Steelers game, Steelers-Bengals last week? I have it up right now. Don't go and cheat.
I won't. My hands are right here. Russell Wilson, captain. T. Higgins. I would go Najee Harris for sure. Joe Burrow. Was Yosevas in the optimal? I know.
What if I told you in that game, the optimal lineup, there was not a wide receiver?
There was not a wide receiver. That would make sense because of Higgins. That makes no sense.
No Chase, no Higgins. Double quarterback, tight end Pat Freiermuth. Najee Harris, Chris Boswell, kicker, Chase Brown. So double running back, double quarterback, kicker, tight end.
And that's right, because Chase Brown didn't even go off either. But that is very impressive. I thought Higgins had two, and no, he just had the one. So that's interesting. And it kind of shows you a path that you can do tonight. Let's go ahead and get our second build up using SaberSim. Again, code RPS15, 15% off your first purchase here at Run Pure Sports. Don't be afraid to check it out. If you're ever wondering about using SaberSim, it's always a good week to use it, but there is a lack of NBA action this week. So I would almost say you almost want to wait till next week if you really, really want to try out a free trial for NBA and NFL and stuff. But
I mean, Rubio, I'm tilted after watching last night's Chiefs game, but I pulled up the schedule. I'm feeling so dialed on these totals and these bets and just NBA DFS in general right now. Like, if Wemby doesn't get hurt and LeBron doesn't get ruled out randomly, and we had the script, and some members did extremely well last night, but we had the script absolutely nailed on yesterday's slate in NBA. And I pulled up the schedule this week, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this is brutal. There's no games at all. It's brutal.
Yep, and it's the NBA Cup action is what is causing that. But let's go ahead and talk about these quarterbacks, AP. So we got Joe Burrow projected at 21.5, Cooper Rush at 16.1. My first instinct is Cooper Rush is somehow too low. This is speaking as a Bengals fan.
Yes.
This is the same team that made Russell Wilson pass or get almost 40 fantasy points last time out. What was it? Or just above 30 fantasy points, I should say. I think that we're going to be buying on Cooper Rush just a tad here, AP. I think you'll be in agreement with that. And my first instinct is getting Joe Burrow kind of where he's at, right? He's going to be the highest projected on the slate. He's 10-2. We're going to get a ton of him. He's going to correlate very well. And he's also viable in the captain. What's your take on this quarterback room tonight?
What do you think? And I'm talking strictly fantasy points. Because I think fantasy points is a good indicator of it's a reflection of quarterback production and production in general. So I think it's just an easy metric to use instead of getting into advanced stuff. What do you think the average that quarterbacks have put up against the Bengals over the last 5 games?
21.
Nope. 24.24. What do you think the average is over the last 10 games?
Oh man, it has to be a little bit lower.
Wider sample.
22.
24.36.
That's even worse. I cannot believe it.
Now on the season, 22.21. So when I look at this projection, it's Cooper Rush, mind you, but and it's averages. Those it can definitely be misleading on a week-to-week basis. But does it make sense to go that light off of what the average has done on a week-over-week basis, looking at short-term and longer-term durations? I mean, I would rather get a little more bullish, to be honest, on Cooper Rush. Maybe get him in the 18, 19 range. It's not. I mean, he's been serviceable. Let me pull up his stats. I mean, he's avoiding mistakes. He has 1 interception over his last 3 starts. He has 4 touchdowns. That was against the Texans, Commanders, and Giants. This is going to be the best matchup in the world for him. His receivers are what? They're a full go. CeeDee Lamb. I mean, they have individual stuff that they want to hit. I mean, that's why they're playing, right? They're probably thinking towards their year-end kind of bonuses and production-based bonuses, right?
Well, you know what was funny, AP, as I came in thinking that the Cowboys were 4-8. 5-7, they technically still have a chance to make the playoffs. It's a very slim chance, but if they win tonight, they would have the same record as the Cardinals, 49ers, and ultimately have a small chance at the wild card spot. You would still need to catch the Commanders, who they beat a couple weeks ago. But it's not the most outside chance in the world. They would be behind the Rams and Commanders, but tied in the win-loss column on the Cardinals and 49ers, though. So there's still a chance. Like, they are still technically playing for something, even though the odds are very, very thin. There's a chance that they do make the playoffs if they win out.
I like it. I don't know. I'm a little higher than you are on beefing up their projections. Do we have the RPS ones up yet?
We beefed up Cooper Rush a lot. We're going to get a ton of them. Don't worry about that one. But we'll beef up Burrow just slightly as well. That's a good number to get him at. Let's go ahead. And I know we can spend all day talking about quarterbacks. I think we both think they're good plays. But let's go ahead and get into the meat and drink of the slate here, and that's the running back position. We've got two workhorses at this point, and it's weird to call Rico Dowdle a workhorse, but he is the guy. Mike McCarthy is now going to fully entrust the running back position to Rico Dowdle, and it's about time. That we shouldn't see Zeke. We shouldn't see Dalvin Cook all that much, right? Like, Lepke comes in a little bit in passing situations, but, of course, we still get scared by the Zeke, vulture, and that's still a big possibility, but he is 1,200. So it's not like it's the most unrealistic thing in the entire world. I think both these guys are good numbers. We know what Chase Brown can do in the pass game. We see what he is. He's the main guy for one of the best offenses in the league. I'm fine buying on that, right? And we're going to sell a little bit on the wide receivers. We'll talk about that in a bit. But I also really want to buy on Rico Dowdle because this is a Bengals team that made Najee Harris look like Danny Woodhead in the passing game last week. I mean, this is just what they are doing is they can't defend anyone. The linebackers are too slow. They gave up 44 to the Steelers, but Najee Harris, 6 for 54. Jaylen Warren, 4 for 55. That is just through the air. They gave up over 100 yards in the passing game, the running backs. They gave up over 10 catches. I think that kind of leads into to Rico Dowdle getting a fair shot at the same thing. Like, I see him getting significantly involved in the passing game. This isn't just an isolated instance where these guys are getting involved. Like, the Bengals have always been weak just defending any pass catching running back, and it's always the teams that are able to utilize it and kill them with it. AP buying on both the starters, slightly selling on Zeke. But the big thing to note with Zeke, he's only 1,200, so we need a value, and that's just at the end of the day we're going to need a value. And the same thing goes for Khalil Herbert. These guys are going to pop because they are cheap, and there is no value on the slate as things stand. What are you doing here?
I love the Danny Woodhead analogy, Rubio. I mean, Rubio, do you know I played against him back in high school?
Really?
I did. He's he broke all of his state records against us in that game. He rushed for like over 300 and some yards, I think, in that game against us. Like, dude he was on another level. Like, it was absolutely crazy. But so obviously to work. I mean, this is where it makes like the slate interesting. Both teams have been pretty bad against running backs, especially Dallas. I mean, if you look at over the last 9 games, I mean, they're allowing at least 1 touchdown to running backs a game. You see an uptick in fantasy production. Rico Dowdle, I thought, has also looked good. So it's going to be another one. And for me, it comes down to price. Like, I'm going to put all of these guys into a bucket, these skill position players. And that's where you could get scenarios where maybe it's a one receiver in the optimal lineup with a couple of these running backs, and the quarterbacks. I mean, it's very similar to what we saw last week against the Steelers. I mean, that scenario can definitely pan out. Got to love what Chase Brown is doing. I mean, this dude's an absolute stud. Love the matchup. Obviously, we highlighted that. When you just look at averages as well, you see over 15 fantasy points on average over the last 5 games to RB1s. Both teams are averaging that number. So we're likely to see good production from them. When I think about this, though, too, and I'm thinking about some of these other I mean, that projection on Brown and the difference between Dowdle and Brown, I mean, it seems pretty significant. I know we're bullish. We're bumping up both. But, man, it seems a little much. I almost see them kind of a little bit closer together.
So So
I mean, what's your take on last week? Like we saw Chase Brown with 32, 22, 27 touches and then 15 last week against the Steelers, which had been a good matchup for running backs coming to that game. What's your take on that? Was it game script, game flow dependent?
Purely game script. You saw it where they were chasing the game the entire second half. Then don't forget that Burrow also gave up a strip six, fumble. So basically in the second half, the running backs were a non-factor. And Chase Brown is still very effective in the pass game. He went 3 for 30. It was his worst game through the air in 4 or 5 games. And I've been saying this, though, since he took over the role for Zach Moss, is that he is going to be a top 5 fantasy running back for the rest of the season. And that's been the case since Zach Moss has went down. He's had at least 5 catches in all those games, and that was the first game he went 3 for 30. So I think he's script proof, but I also think they went away from the passing game, from the running game a little bit. You also saw it against Baltimore. He only carried the ball 13 times, which was the right move, right? You don't run the ball against Baltimore, but he also had 9 catches in that game. I'm willing to think that last game was just more of we're chasing the game. The Steelers, they still scored 38 points. I mean, 31 of those was the offense because Cam Taylor had a pick 6 and stuff, but the offense was still clicking. I think Chase Brown is one of the best running backs to have because we know how involved he can be in the passing game. We know what he can do on the ground. I think this is a rightful gap, and that's also an 800 price difference. But look, that's not to say that Rico Dowdle won't pop for us in a lot of lineups. He should. But I do think Chase Brown is in a tier of his own right now. I would say a tier where he honestly could be projected the same as Alvin Kamara week in and week out, and even a guy like Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. Like his projection deserves to be up in that range.
I would make the argument that they should be closer together. We've seen overall touches from Dowdle just increase week over week. Yep. You're talking 12, 22, 25 last week against the Giants. I thought he looked incredible. 5.1 rush yards per carry, really good baseline numbers. If we kind of flip that script where that DC tweeted out, Cowboys win, Burrow throws for 400, is Chase Brown putting up a score like that, or is it kind of flipped where Rico Dowdle?
He has.
I'm pulling your arm a little bit here, but
he has put up the score when they have been losing games and putting up huge points. He's been in the optimal winner of 4 straight weeks in Bengals showdowns, and he was in the optimal winner last week despite not getting a huge workload and still scored 20 fantasy points or 19 fantasy points. Like that was a bad game script for him, and he still did really well. Like I would argue that, but I think the important thing is
last week 19.
Yeah, he was in the optimal winner in showdown, even with a very mediocre game by his standards. And Rico Dowdle, though, we have to emphasize this. He is not the lead back. And we know how good opposing offenses have been against this Bengals defense. We do want to be bullish on Rico Dowdle. We did lower Ezekiel Elliott quite a bit. But at the same time, you're going to need cheap guys. Lepke is going to hit a lot of value plays. He ran 13 routes last game. He is kind of their main pass protection back, and they can also leak out for some routes. This is an interesting spot because I do think we're going to end up with a lot more of these guys than we initially think here, AP. Do you have anything else to add, or should we move on to wide receiver, tight end?
No, I think we're good.
All right, let's move on to wide receivers and tight ends here. Jamar Chase popped up on the injury report, but I got no doubt that he'll be able to play for this one. T. Higgins, back fully healthy, has been absolutely cooking since he stepped back into the lineup. CD Lamb was a non-factor last week in their win against the Giants. You have Jake Ferguson back. Brandon Cooks was also good to see him back. 20 routes, 7 targets last week. Jalen Tolbert, Mike Gesicki, Yost Voss, Turpin. Turpin's the one who was very surprising. Only 10 routes last week, AP. But he turned those 10 routes into, 5 targets and 4 receptions for 53 yards. So there's some value here, and this is in the flex, for our positional pricing. A familiar face is going to pop up here for the Bengals as well. We got Tanner Hudson and Drew Sample are both going to pop in the cheap range. What is your initial take on these wide receiver rooms? Who do you want to bump up, and who do you want to pump down?
So going back to some of this data, last 5 games, I mean, it really is like crazy. The Bengals right now, I mean, these numbers, in my opinion, especially in the year of the running back, if we want to call it this year, the year of the running back, the Bengals are giving up on average over 1.5 touchdowns a game to opposing receivers. I mean, when you look at every other team in the league, you're not seeing like I mean, teams have been much better against wide receivers. I mean, what was Kirk Cousins gone now 4 or 5 games without throwing for a touchdown? I mean, pretty insane. Not the case. You're seeing it happen often against the Bengals. 177 yards on average to opposing receivers. Does not include tight ends into that category. I want to bump up CeeDee Lamb, and I want CeeDee Lamb as the highest projected wide receiver on the slate. Now, you might fight me on this, the Bengals guy, with Jamar Chase, but I think it's interesting. So what's your take on that? And I get it, the price or get them closer aligned. I get Jamar Chase has a massive price tag. I fully get it. I just love the receivers on the Dallas side, especially CeeDee Lamb. Bounce back spot for him. Just looking at what they didn't need to use him. And the Giants have been pretty good, like low-key good against wide receivers. And CeeDee Lamb got hurt in that game.
Yeah.
I remember he had his helmet off like the entire.
He didn't even play the last, like basically the second half almost the full second half, because I remember being with my cousins and stuff, and he was like cheering against CeeDee Lamb, and when he was hurt and stuff, I think he was like, "Oh, what's happening?" I just kind of brought back a little memory there. I completely forgot that he ended up getting hurt, and then Turpin, Tolbert, and Cooks all had a little bit more usage in that third and fourth quarter.
I want to bump up Cooks too. He was on the field a lot. I think he's too cheap for that role. I want to get over on the pass catchers for Dallas.
So talk about Jake Ferguson then. All right, because look, Freiermuth was in the optimal last game. Ferguson's props are not great. However, at 5'4", he's probably going to be extremely chalky once this is all said and done. And we know what Freiermuth just did to the Bengals. We know how ineffective they are against the tight ends. We saw Will Dissly absolutely cook them 3 weeks ago. We know what Mark Andrews scored against them 2 weeks ago as well. Like, the tight ends are on a roll against Cincinnati Bengals. Jake Ferguson's a bit too cheap. What do you want to do with him? Is this 10-6 projection need to be bumped up?
Yeah, I mean, I like all of these guys. That's why I'm so high on Cooper Rush too. It's been very consistent. When you look at the numbers, tight ends also smashing against the Bengals. I mean, look, we all know it. Like, this defense is just in absolute shambles, which is why it makes these games fun, especially from a showdown standpoint. So yeah, I would put Mary Ferguson. And if you pull up the flow chart, Run Pure Sports flow chart, I believe Mary Ferguson right in there in the nuts, the absolute nuts position. Yeah, it has to be. So yeah, you made it
out that the last 5 weeks are a big factor in his flow chart rankings, and the Bengals have been really, really bad against the tight end in the last 5 weeks.
Yeah, and I guess going back to Cooks, even with Lamb hobbled last week, it's not like he had some slate breaking type of performance. We haven't seen Jake Ferguson in 2 or 3 weeks?
Yeah, the last time he played was 3 weeks ago. So we've seen Schoonmaker step in. And this is my fear with
Ferguson. Schoonmaker's been good too.
Right. Yeah, and he was a high draft pick, and he did really well filling in, for Jake Ferguson. I don't mind thinking they're going to run more double tight end sets tonight. 3,400 is a very tall tag for a backup tight end. So one thing I just want to do, AP, is I want to bump up Schoonmaker. I want to think that they might run a little bit more 12 personnel. I want to think that maybe Schoonmaker gets a shot in the red zone, because that he should still have a role. And that's my opinion. I think all these Cowboys were a bit too low, in my opinion. I think when Turpin's in, they try and get him the ball. I think so. This is a good one from we had a good question here, just talking about Tolbert from Lee Price here. This is one of those things where he had 27 routes last game, which was second on the team, only behind CeeDee Lamb. But CeeDee Lamb was hurt for most of those. I just don't know if Tolbert's good, man. He's played a lot this year, but he has just been so buns this year. He's gotten the ample opportunity, but really hasn't done much with it. 2,800 though is so cheap, so he's going to be mega chalk. But is there a way we can pivot around it? Do you want a guy like Turpin around him? Why the hell did they trade for Mingo? The world will never know. Only 8 routes last game as well, 4 targets. I don't really know how the back end of this wide receiver room works for the Cowboys, but I am going to talk about the Bengals here now too. And I think Brooks probably will be a DNP, by the way.
I mean, I want to kind of walk my comments back a little bit in regards to Lamb over Chase, or even kind of in that range. I mean, when you think about these two teams, from a target tree standpoint, with Burrow, it's clearly defined in Cincinnati. It's Chase, it's Higgins, Yoshi Voss. I mean, they tried the Jermaine Burton experience. I mean, we haven't seen him in a minute, rightfully so. Some of those, I mean, God, who knows with that guy? Like all the talent, I mean, tons of talent, just maybe a lack of motivation. Yoshi Voss, kind of, he's had some opportunities, but really clearly it's Chase and Higgins. And then now, like I think that target tree is way more defined than the Dallas side. I do see the Dallas side being a lot more high variance just with the names and guys that are in there in the mix. So I agree with you on that. Getting over on the Bengals receivers just from a target tree standpoint. I mean, I think they've had combined double-digit targets now, like 4 or 5 weeks in a row. When they're both healthy, T. Higgins and Chase.
Yeah, I think you had 9 targets for Chase last week, which was a little low, but at the same time, you still turned that into 686 and 1. You're getting high projections on these guys, but you're also getting high price tags. And the thing about these projections is they could honestly be baking in a touchdown a little bit more. Like Higgins' prop is only like 71.5 on DK pick 6, right? And Chase's is not in the hundreds either. Like you're still needing a touchdown here. I don't mind separating them. I think you're going to need one, but you're not going to need both. I think the Sims will kind of illustrate that. I do like putting CeeDee Lamb right in the middle of them, clearly defining it. Lamb is better than Higgins, but we would take Jamar Chase over him. But yeah, you're right about the target tree. All right, it's very, very thin or very narrow in Cincinnati. Yeah, 19 targets for Higgins and Chase last game, and ultimately, like you saw 5, 4, 3, 4, 2, and that was the rest of the targets for the rest of the players. So, yeah, I do want these guys. Gesicki was utilized a little bit more as a tight end than usual last game, which is good to see for his role if he's trying to maintain a consistent spot in this offense. Yosh Voss did well. I mean, I know it looks like we're buying on everyone in this game, but we also think this game goes over. I think the one guy I would sell here, let me just go ahead and get some color-coded here. I don't think I would buy completely on Tolbert, but he'd still be one of our top guys because he's under 3K, projected around 5.75. Sell him. And then Tanner Hudson. Only 10 routes last game. Turned that into 4 targets. So the thing with Tanner Hudson is when he is in the game, Burrow does look his way. I don't mind bumping him up. And I don't mind bumping up Drew Sample just a tad too, because we're going to need value. We know how effective Joe Burrow is in the red zone. He does target these guys as well. I think this is a decent spot to ultimately just kind of play one of these cheap tight ends and hope you get lucky. Burton, you can also just throw in the mix there too. So, like, final thing is we're selling on a few of these guys, but we're mostly buying on these passing offenses because the projections are just a little bit too low. Anything else you want to add, AP?
I think we readjust the Bengals receivers back up a little bit.
Yeah, we did.
Why does it show us red?
Too high. I thought they were too high to begin with, right? So okay. Like 20.6 for Jamar Chase is like a very high projection. However, if we wanted to just do this, let's go ahead and do that.
My one concern is like I want to retain a few shares for Chase captains just because he has the ability to absolutely break a slate. We saw it twice already this year, both times against Baltimore. 44 and 58 fantasy points. The first game against them, T. Higgins was in. The second game, he wasn't. In that first game, T. Higgins also went off. I think from a price standpoint, it is easier for Higgins to find himself into the captain position, but he'll be more popular. Like, what do we think? What do we think Chase's ownership will be in the captain?
They think it's going to be very high. And what he's done on primetime football has been nothing short of extraordinary as well. Yeah. But they're projecting for about 56% or 50%.
Just looking at his price and the other options on the slate, I mean, he has to deliver a monster performance. Yeah. He obviously can, but maybe the field's too heavy on it. Maybe it's like hand builders forcing him in. He's going to need a monster number to be captain optimal, which he can fully do it. I mean, there's one guy. It's definitely him, and I would argue CeeDee Lamb as well.
So real quick, I want to address this. So Lee Price, like, I'm thinking this too. What if I were to give you 6 points from Hudson at 2K? Would you take it? And I 100% would. And I think the more interesting question is, would you lock it? I honestly think if you gave you 6 points at 2K tonight, AP, I would lock that. We don't know that with Hudson. It's far from a lock. But I'm like wondering, you don't need much at all, right? Like you don't need much from one of these cheapies to get into the winner. And I think I would take 6 points, and I would bet on him being in the winner at that point because value is a little bit spread out. It's a little bit gross tonight. You're going to want the studs. You're going to want them in the captain. I think that would be one of those things where just getting on one of those value tight ends for the Bengals, getting on like a guy like Tolbert or Turpin, I think that's going to be a very popular path, but something that will have to be done tonight in order to avoid maybe Zeke getting a lot of touches. So one thing to note, AP, we're not going to get any Cade York in the Sims because he is replacing Evan McPherson. SaberSim hasn't updated that yet, but they will do soon. And we get the best kicker in football right now, Brandon Aubrey. So what do you want to do with kickers and defenses? I mean, 4K and 3,600. This kind of goes into my point, right? We talked about how bad value is, right? We talked about how we think this game is going to go over. You saw last week the Bengals had a defensive touchdown. The Steelers had a defensive touchdown, right? Even in a 44-38 game, there is chances that these guys can be in the winner. I don't want to sell on the defenses completely because if we did have the salary, I think these defenses have a decent chance of outscoring everyone below them. But I don't want to get bullish on them either. So just for what it's worth, I think like leaving them almost where they are at would probably be like my favorite thing to do. Just kind of giving that symbolic. We are selling on them, but not completely. And then for the kickers, I want to buy on them. We saw Matthew Wright, the doink for the division. They do like kicking their field goals. And I think Kurt had a funny point yesterday. He said that every time a team against the Bengals starts a drive, they're already in field goal range by the third or fourth play. That is very much imperative on Cowboys when they're in field goal range as soon as they cross the 50. So I know this is the most absurd thing, but like I really want to buy Brandon Aubrey tonight. And I think this is why a stud captain is going to be really good for me because I think a stud captain is going to break it up to where it's like 4 studs, kicker, and then a value piece. And I'm very much all for that with Aubrey tonight. What do you think?
Hasn't he missed 3 field goal attempts of his last 8? Could we still call him the best kicker in the NFL?
What kicker has been good in the NFL at this rate? He's 27 for 32. And let's check these misses out, AP. We can't slander my goat here.
No, I think what you did is fine there. I don't like, dude, kickers have like 5K. Is there a chance he get like I'm not going to play him in the captain, but is there a chance he's flex optimal? Of course there is. So in this Brendan Aubrey, he's going to be fine. And it's just, will the opportunity be there? Like, is it going to be a 4 or 5 field goal game? I mean, maybe, but dude, the Bengals can't stop anyone. Like, I don't know.
Well, that's the thing, AP. They can't stop anyone. So you're in field goal range. It's like let's put the handicap on the Cowboys.
Yeah, but that means that they gotta. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
On the Cowboys offense. Cooper Rush.
If they have if they can find some way to be that bend and break defense, which we haven't seen at all, then maybe. But yeah, I definitely want Aubrey shares in the flex. I can't play him at captain. Can
I argue against it with case in point of Cameron Dicker scoring like 16 fantasy points against the Bengals and stuff? Like I think there are.
Wait, do you like him in the captain, Brandon Aubrey tonight?
No. Matthew Wright being in the captain was a travesty to last night's showdown.
That made sense because the Chiefs can't score touchdowns right now.
If the guys were winning like 73,000 a piece or 76,000 or something like that, and they got bumped down to like 26,000. I think it was over 100,000. And they got bumped down.
Who was winning that?
Oh, it was 3 different guys, I think, but it was a very small chop at the top, and then it ended up being only a 2-way chop, which was 167K, I think. But yeah, it was gross to see the Matthew Wright captain backers get there, especially when Josh Palmer should have scored 2 touchdowns and 130 yards or whatever. But I won't hold grudges. I'm very close to not being a Chargers fan anymore after basketball season, so I can't wait for that to happen. Let's go ahead and run these sims. We're not going to get any Cade York again. Best time to run these is 90 minutes before lock once SaberSim has it fully dialed, and it should lead to a good experience there. AP, what do we have on tap today? No NBA, but we still got a couple NFL shows, right?
Yeah, we got one NBA game tonight. Got the Knicks, Raptors, I think.
That means I'm on the playbook. I forgot about that.
Yeah, playbook. There'll be a slate for that. We got Showdown Kings here at 2 o'clock, I think, followed by the Print Factory with Big T and JSU. Full content up, obviously, for both Showdown slates today. So yeah, it's a showdown type of day. There must be like college basketball and stuff. I mean, we might have to go dabble. Our boy Stevie Boyden kills it. Gavin, his buddy, they absolutely kill it in the college basketball
Oh yeah.
streets.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I want to check the college basketball schedule.
What's your take on the NCAA playoffs? Who do you got winning it all? I'm a little behind on college football, but
I thought the bracket was kind of shambolic. I don't think Oregon deserves to play Ohio State in round 2. I think Ohio State will kill Tennessee. Ryan Day still sucks as a coach, but I just think the SEC is that bad this year. I think Texas absolutely flukes into one of the easiest parts of the bracket. They didn't deserve that at all, but they get to play Arizona State in the second round. They've given me no reason to pick against them, but I think it's Oregon. I mean, their defense is a little bit shaky at times, but I don't think anyone in the SEC has the firepower, and I don't think Ohio State or Penn State do either. So I think it's going to be Oregon. Who do you think?
I think if man, it's hard to beat a team twice. Assuming Ohio State beats Tennessee, and again, I'm like just looking at this right now, and I am far from a college football expert. Far from it. I did watch that game, Oregon, Ohio State. I just know it's tough to beat a team twice, so I would not be surprised if Ohio State went in and won, got that upset. I thought Arizona State, they're such a beast. I thought they looked good.
Yeah, but like
it'll be tough against Texas,
tier, though, right? Like they're just not in the same tier, and that's like
no, I know. That's like I think Texas against Ohio State. So like that's a 5 against an 8. Like I think that's a likely outcome.
That's doable.
I think man, Penn State should Penn State. I thought they looked pretty good. Georgia will find a way in there as well, but I don't know, man. I think it's going to be really interesting. Indiana at times has looked incredible this season. I haven't watched Notre Dame play a lot. I don't know. I'm really excited for this, though. I think it's going to be far more entertaining than like a bunch of bowl games. Like bowl games are just stupid. I really like this format. And again, I can't say that I'm like, I mean, all the people in chat probably are more knowledgeable than me than what's going on. But I just, off the surface, like big picture point, I really like what I'm seeing here. I think it's going to be very entertaining.
Yeah, and it should be a good one. So we got 500 lineups for waiting the sim. So excuse us for the college football talk. We know what Bruce does a great job with the college football product. Yep. You have to just see it consistently. What you'll have content-wise, you'll have everything for the CFB playoffs, and then as well as everything else. And you were just talking about Boyden in the college basketball streets. He's been posting a ton of college basketball props as well, which is great. Lee Price, yeah. NFL, NBA, not enough time for college sports. I can't imagine, especially your case, having kids, baby.
I wanted to, so like every week I run one build, usually in the 4-4-4 or 5-5-5, have fun with it. And I run it. I use RPS content. Bruce kills it. And I wanted to get exposure to that Oregon game. I'm like, one of these games is just going to randomly nuke. And I didn't because I'm like, it's a Big Ten game. I'm probably wrong. But man, that game was absolutely insane. I actually min cashed. I just snuck in. So it was fine. But Rubio, it's one of those things where it's like you got this game that's just back, forth. Neither team can stop each other. And you just see your lineup like slowly moving backwards. Yep. And it's like, I know how this goes. That game was crazy, like absolutely crazy.
Let's go to the flagship tournament tonight. MME-wise, our top lineup AP, a CD Lamb captain with Yoshabas and Joe Burrow. So this kind of goes into my point, especially if we're going to like Ferguson a little bit. These lineups aren't going to be surprising to see. You got Lamb. You paid both stud wide receivers, and you're playing their quarterback instead. This is where it gets a little bit interesting. And this is why it doesn't dupe. Among 5,000 teams that were built out, there wasn't a single dupe among them. So that is very interesting to me. I also want to just scroll down here to another one, 0 dupes, which is incredible at 50K salary field. I think this one will definitely be duped. I'm calling that right now. I'm calling BS. This one gets duped 100%. But Higgins, Lepke, Burrow, Rush, Lamb, Gesicki, these are not loving Chase or Higgins here. And I'm going to go to ownership here. It's got your guy Lamb. It's got Dowdle. It's got Cooper Rush in the captain a lot too, which I want your take on Cooper Rush in the captain spot here. And I also want to check out a T. Higgins captain while we're at it. Not that one because we already saw it. Like this build right here, that's a good team. I mean, that really is. And these builds make a lot of sense. What's your take on these captains here?
I mean, what, last year or no? Wait, when did I mean? Yeah, no, this year. I mean, he threw for what, 350 some yards
Yep.
against, yeah. Now
Texans.
throwing a few touchdowns. I think they're like, he's just too cheap. I think it would be a mistake removing him from our captain pool. So I'm gonna have shares of it's just a pricing thing, a matchup thing. It's a perfect matchup, and his price is just too low for the situation. We like points, so I think it would be a mistake to eliminate him from the captain spot, unless he was going to be like mega chalk, which I don't see that being the case.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. Someone asked about Brandon Cook's snaps. He ran 21 routes last week or 20 routes last week, and that was 11 days ago. I don't honestly expect him to be a full go for what it's worth. No nursing him back after you've had 11 days of rest. He's already been back for a couple weeks as well. So this is interesting, AP. I thought we'd get like more mid-tier captain, like Jake Ferguson, for example. So here's what a Jake Ferguson captain looks like. It actually looks really good. I will say this, like I would be very bullish on this one, but we're not seeing a ton of Chase Brown in these teams just yet. So let's go ahead and just scroll down here. I want to see if there's a Chase Brown, Jake Ferguson captain team. Hey, this is the cheap tight end build I was talking about. I think Ferguson's a really good captain play tonight, AP. The more I come back to it, look at these builds you're able to get. You're able to get both quarterbacks. You're able to get a stud running back. You're able to get a stud wide receiver. You can go so many routes with it. I think the Jake Ferguson route might be my preferred path in single entry. We get the most of Cooper Rush in the flex, which makes a lot of sense. We don't get a ton of Burrow. Burrow, we get around 51%, which I imagine is going to be below the field. I imagine Burrow gets up to 65, 68%. That's exactly what SaberSim is saying. Yeah, we're going to be slightly below the field if we ran these numbers as they are. Rico Dowdle, despite bumping him up, what was it? Over 2 points from the RPS projection. We're also not getting a ton of him in the flex. However, in the captain, he is our second highest guy at 14%. So anything that's just jumping off the page, did you want me to bring up Brandon Aubrey team by chance too to kind of showcase?
I got to use our guy Bogarts in the NBA Street, one of his terms that he often uses with these values, these value plays that can be traps. I mean, the Ferguson captain, it feels a little thoughty. Like it looks good. It looks good on paper, but it looks like a complete trap. It looks like a lineup that will be pretty popular because you can just jam in so many different. Like anytime I do that, I kind of end up regretting it. Now, again, this is a new game, obviously many different outcomes. I'm not saying like completely ignore it. I just, man, it looks too good. Like it has to be a build route that is very popular, I think, in multi-entry formats. And single entry, I think you can get away with it, but I still want to prioritize even like the quarterbacks, especially the quarterbacks in this game, but the wide receivers, quarterbacks, and even these stud running backs potentially over a Mary Ferguson. But again, I think if there was a tight end that I would consider playing, it could be him. It's just, does he lose his role a little bit with how good Luke Schoonmaker's been? I don't know, man.
Yeah, I'm with you, and that's definitely the concern. But he has been like 7K, right? So like you're kind of getting that baked into the price. However, you're right; it will be a little bit popular. But yeah, this is something where I look at a build like this, AP, and if I was playing like Aubrey with Ferguson stuff, I honestly think like going one of the receivers over Burrow could be the move. But I don't know. Like Burrow can spread it out. Like this is a perfect team. As again, 50K salary, I don't expect the zero dupes to stay true there. Like I think there will be way more than zero dupes in a team like this that fills out 50K salary, has a lot of the popular pieces and stuff. But Gesicki's the guy. If Gesicki gets 10 fantasy points tonight, he will be a very interesting play. 5 for 53 last week, ran about half the routes for the Bengals. Yoshivas ran a lot of routes, which was surprising, which hurts a guy like Gesicki, but he is one of the more interesting options here. Last thing I want to do, AP, I want to make sure we do our homework on the CeeDee Lamb and Rico Dowdle captain teams. I just want to see what these look like. They're very Cowboys heavy. The Cowboys are underdogs in this game. However, they should still score points. So when you're seeing a lot of 5-1 Cowboys, it's for good reason. And it's the underdog script too, which I think this is a good path. Here's one, Chase Brown, Bengals defense. I don't really love that 3-3. Let me see if we get another 4-2. Oh, this one makes a lot of sense too. If you want the Cowboys defense, I don't know, AP. Like, here we go. This one has Turpin. I want to talk about Turpin a little bit. This is a lineup that could make sense with Turpin. Do I love it with both quarterbacks? Maybe, maybe not. You could maybe go chase the Higgins and upgrade like Lepke or something like that, or upgrade Turpin to Aubrey. You do have options in that path. Last thing, Rico Dowdle captain, and then I'll let you.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to see.
Yeah, Rico Dowdle captain. You get Jake Ferguson here, Jamar Chase 5-1. I see these 5-1s.
If I'm playing Rico Dowdle captain, like I want Bengals on the run back. Like look at all those 5-1s with Dowdle captain. I think I want the quarterbacks in there too. Like I don't know. Like some of those are just absolutely wild. Bengals defense. The Sims have gone crazy. That was a 5-1 with Bengals defense. Dowdle captain. I mean, that
do like Bengals defense thingy, and I think like it's not like in an extremely high degree or anything like that. But like AP, like they're jamming in some Chiefs and Chargers, and it looked really good in that first half to have Chiefs. Hell, even the Chargers defense was scoring well because they were getting to Mahomes. And this kind of goes into the path, AP, of what we were talking about. The value here is a little bit scattered. Right? If you got 9 points from a defense tonight, you probably would take it and they might be in the winner. They would probably have a good chance of being in the winner with 9 points. So it's not something that we want to forget, despite, this being hopefully a game with 50 points in it. The defenses can still be optimal because the value is so dispersed. All right, so the dogs are now having a bark party upstairs, but I should be good to get through this. But this one I like too, a Tanner Hudson team with T. Higgins, Cooper Rush, Brandon Aubrey. Like this is a really good team that I could see myself running. Leaves 500 as well. Shouldn't be duped this high. A Rico Dowdle captain team that I think we can both get behind there.
Yeah, the other I was just watching chat. The other thing too is like, I mean, Dallas defense. You got to be careful when you're looking at the data. They haven't been good as a group, but they're slowly getting pieces back. We saw last week. So you got to look at the stats too and understand who was active, who was available, and who wasn't. I think that's going to be important. That's too why I'm starting to really like the running backs a little bit more. And quarterback captain feels good. I'll be honest, just because there's so many different paths, each team can kind of spread it out. I would like Chase more at captain, but man, the price tag is massive. It probably ends up being like a T. Higgins or I don't know, or a Chase Brown captain or Burrow. I mean, he could be in there too, but I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have stud skill position players and the quarterbacks as my captains. I'm very confident in that. No kickers for me tonight. Probably no Mary Ferguson unless I pull up the playbook later and you talk me onto it. But doesn't mean I won't have plenty of him in the flex.
All right, let's go out on a high note here. Let's look at the Brandon Aubrey captain team. Yeah, look at that, man. Matthew Wright would be proud of that one. I'll tell you that. What's the path here? Could you flip the Cowboys defense into something else to make it more serviceable? Sure. But let's not take that serious. If Brandon Aubrey winner in the captain tonight, I will be upset because I'm not playing him in the captain, despite absolutely loving him here. Lee Price, you're right. Orlando Brown is out. So Sheldon Rankins as well for the Bengals. They're a little bit beat up. I would take the Cowboys with the spread. I don't have any confidence in the Bengals.
I'm with you, but Burrow's been awesome, man. Like he has been good. He has weapons that can create separation. I am with you. I think the one thing I'm not going to play 5-1s tonight. I think there's just too many weapons, and you have too clear of a target tree on the Bengals side for me to feel confident about a 5-1.
Yep, I'm with you there. All right, AP, who's your most important player of the slate before we head on out of here?
That's such a good question. Right now, I'm gonna I don't know. Like I want to say Rico Dowdle. I love the matchup. I'm with you on the Dallas side. They're at home. Like the lack of wins that they've had at home, I think they're coming off their first win over the Giants. That was the first home win of the season. I think they make it 2 in a row. So like I like the Cow. I don't want to pick on your Bengals. Like I just think it's like, man, Dallas a little like there's a little bit of momentum going for them. And the fact that they just had, like, I think they get 2 wins in a row at home. So give me Dallas +5 in the money line. A big game from Rico Dowdle.
I like it, Rico Dowdle. I'm going to go a Cowboy as well. I'm going to go with the guy who's going to be locked in for double digits tonight. A guy who's got the powerful right leg, that makes Cristiano Ronaldo cry at night. It is the one, the only. Yeah, the one, the only. Brandon Aubrey. They say kickers unpredictable, but I can tell you one thing.
Real quick, like Rubio, thinking back to it's just the Bengals all year have found the wildest ways to lose games, while the Chiefs have found the craziest games or ways to win games. So I think that's what happens tonight. And again, there's so much you guys have so much skill on your team. I think you guys are a good football team with better coaching and just less craziness. There's so many, this season could have gone so many different ways, and it hasn't. I feel like that continues tonight, and we're all just yep, it's an amazing game, but yep, they found a way to lose the game. That's how I see it going.
Yep, and on a Bengals note too, I think Tanner Hudson being my most interesting value play. 4 targets on 10 routes last game. Interesting play. One of those value pieces I can see myself. I'm always high on Tanner Hudson whenever he's in the game. I always jam him in Showdown, but it's because he's always, a factor, especially in the red zone when Burrow can target any one of these guys. Hudson would be my sneaky one. Aubrey, though, for real, I will have a ton of. For AP and for I, we thank y'all for watching. If you're not chopping the 250K up top with us tonight, well, we hope that if it's not us with you, then maybe you're doing it solo. Bye-bye, and have a great rest of y'all's day.